I keep having to uphold like legacies of horror. Like,
It's a little stressful, I can imagine.
yeah, it is honestly. Yeah, it's like the pressure's there.
I'm Russ Milheim from the Direct. Yeah, congratulations. Black Phone 2, so exciting, and to be a fantastic fest. My first question for you, I'm such a big fan of how this film escalates the concept from that first one. Can you just talk about like why you chose to escalate it the way you did, and basically you turned the grabber into a new age Freddy Krueger?
Well, that was somewhat intentional. It sort of evolved into that idea. But you know, if you're going to make a sequel to a horror film, you can't just regurgitate the same movie and give the audience a revamped version of the original movie. We've all seen sequels that do that. It's always unsatisfying, but you can't go too far off the path either. So the goal was to try to push it far enough without getting into ridiculous territory.
Yeah. Well, yeah, when it comes to the grabber, obviously that comparison to Freddy Krueger's is a quick one to make. But what do you think are the key differences between those two figures?
Well, the biggest one is, the grabber's highly intelligent, articulate conversationalist. Yeah. He likes to talk. That's what he does, and dialogue is part of his stalking. It's part of his torture process. And so, if the role if it just involved quippy one-liners like Freddy Krueger, I don't think Ethan Hawke would be playing that role.
I want to also talk about the environments in these movies, right? They're so important to the story. The first one kind of has that soul-sucking basement that you spend so much time in. And this one turns its attention to, at least from what the trailers seem, the cold, harsh environment. How does that change of scenery kind of affect what you wanted to do with this film?
I actually started with the scenery. I grew up in North Denver, so the first movie was really capturing that time and place when I was 12 in 1978 in North Denver. And I thought that my experiences as a teenager at winter camps in Colorado were really fascinating, really interesting time and place in the 80s to be going to these camps. And, it's a camp movie in the 80s with a killer running amok. Of course, The Shining is a winter movie that takes place in the Rocky Mountains from 1980. So I just felt like it was that idea was allowing the movie to participate in a pretty great tradition of horror films.
So it's been a second. Now you're in another horror movie, so that's exciting.
Yeah, and another horror sequel too.
I know.
Like, I keep having to uphold like legacies of horror. Like,
It's a little stressful, I can imagine.
yeah, it is honestly. Yeah, it's like the pressure's there. I'd love to just establish. Although I guess that's the other bright side about it, right? Is like being in something that has a built-in fan base. It's like I'm lucky to like get into something that people are already excited about.
Mm-hmm. Well, congratulations on this movie and being a fantastic fest. It's so exciting.
I love it here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen crazy shit already. I mean,
What is your favorite that you've seen this year?
What did I see? They all like fly out of your head the second you see them. Oh my God, I saw Silver Screamers yesterday. Did you see that? It's an old folks home that's making a horror film. It's a documentary about an old folks home that like this guy who's a director, he's like, it's really hard to find film funding, so I got a grant to help seniors make a horror film, and it is so cute. And like also having been in so many horror movies, it's like so much inside baseball. I loved it.
Yeah.
It's so fun.
Well, when it comes to this film, it escalates and evolves the concept of the first one in really interesting and exciting ways. Can you tease how it's going to terrorize audiences in brand new ways that the first one didn't?
Oh man, well, you were my first interview re this film. I can say that I think the way that the grabber shows up is like, I think people know this from the trailer, completely different to what was happening in the first film. So I think that will be an evolution that is exciting and spooky, and he looks disgusting. So I would say the grabber definitely is going to be a big part.
People are very quick to compare, especially with the second film. Like the grabber kind of is like Freddy Krueger now.
That's what I thought. Yeah. When I read the script. Yeah.
What would you say are some of the key differences between those two characters?
Oh gosh. Okay. So this is a hard question for me because I am in flashback sequences.
Oh, okay.
And so
All right.
As far as like the total scheme of the film, I spent a lot of time like thinking about and working on the past. So I'm like, I don't know what's going on in present day. Yeah, I don't know. That's a hard question for me to answer. I'm not sure. Okay, just give it to me again. Let me see if I can give you anything.
The difference between the grabber and Freddy Krueger.
I think that he's completely different in that like he's got entirely different motivations. First of all, it's a personal vendetta, And also, I think the rules are slightly different, yeah. But it's definitely like, I think there's the chilling aspect of if it happens in a dream, it can happen in real life. That's definitely scary.
Last question for you. I do want to throw in a quick off-topic one. You were in Gotham Knights. It's a fun, great premise. Sadly it was canceled. But do you know how that show would have continued if it had continued into season 2 and in future seasons? Like, what would have become of your character?
Great question. I think, what we did in season 1 was really laying a lot of groundwork for, we built the superhero team up and sort of got them together, and then they were finally kind of in their costumes at the end, and so we did end on a kind of a cliffhanger. I think we would have just gone, full hero, which I would have been so excited about because I was so ready to kick ass.
Yeah.
I was so, I was like, yeah, I'm gonna play a superhero, and then I get a lot of tragic backstory characters. I don't know what it is, but I'm always like, okay, let's really get into this dark backstory. I spend a lot of my time doing that.
Well, thank you so much, and I look forward to seeing this.
Thank you.
Congratulations. I assume I will.
I'm actually seeing it for the first time tonight, so nice. I also assume I will.
Yeah. I really love the escalation that this movie takes and what it does with the concepts at play. And speaking of that, can you kind of tease how this sequel handles, basically the grabber turning into a new age Freddy Krueger?
Exactly. That's exactly what it seemed like when... I'm sorry, do you want me to hold it?
Either way.
Yeah, this is my first instinct to just grab the mic.
Yeah, you're good.
But, in a way, yeah, that's kind of the reference I had in mind when I first read the script. So it's a cool thing to... Freddy Krueger was an 80s hit, and it's still a huge, iconic horror villain. So it's cool to see that the grabber, is kind of going along those lines and going to become something iconic of its own. It's definitely, I don't want to say it's the same thing as Freddy Krueger because it's not, but it's haunting in its own way. It's terrifying in its own way, and the director and writer, Cargill and Scott Derrickson both did such a great job in writing this story and creating this iconic villain, and I can't wait for the world to see it.
Yeah. Well, I think you gave me a good little transition point with that comparison with the grabber and Freddy Krueger. It's obviously an easy one to make, but what are the differences? How do those two differ?
I don't want to spoil much because there are some physical differences that, in the trailer, one skates on ice, the other one just kind of appears in your dreams in a different sense, and without giving away too much of the grabber in this one, let me think about this. I don't want to get in trouble.
You're safe. If you say, I'm about to get too, so if you say anything that probably shouldn't be there, it'll be cut out.
I'm going to point the obvious. One doesn't have claw fingers. One has an axe. One isn't... Ooh, this is one. Freddy Krueger is kind of his whole thing is being burned alive, something like that, right? Is having that melted face in a sense, and the grabber is, there's an iconic line that he says, hell's not flames, it's ice. So that's one contrast, I guess you could say, but really, I think there's more of a personal connection to the grabber haunting the characters that he haunts. Freddy Krueger, in that sense, it's different, So this one, it's vengeance. It's about getting your payback for Black Phone 2. So I'm going to say in that sense, they're very different characters with two different goals,
Very last question for you.
Anything.
How does this sequel find new ways to terrorize and scare the audience that the first one didn't?
And in every way. This one is a lot scarier than the first one. I don't think the audience is really expecting how dark this one is. The first one is creepy enough because, the grabber kidnaps children, and then the children talk to you in this phone that doesn't work. That idea is great, but this one is a lot deeper than that in every sense. I don't want to spoil anything again, but I just can't wait for the world to see it. It's darker. It's just sad. It's really an emotional movie. But it's a high school coming of age movie. Like Freddy Krueger, that's a high school coming of age film as well. That was a huge hit. So in the sense, this one's also based in the 80s. So it's cool having that I guess similarity, almost mirroring something, but having something like this come out in 2025 is unique. It's its own thing. So I'm excited for people to see that.
I enjoyed the first one. So, my first question is I really love the escalation that this movie takes with the concept. And Just can you, on that topic, can you talk about why you guys chose to escalate the story in that way and basically turn the grabber into a new age Freddy Krueger?
Well, anytime you have a horror sequel, you want to escalate it. You know, that's you go back to Scream 2. They laid out the rules. You know, more bodies, more blood. You know, more scares. And so you always want to go in making something bigger than you had before. But it really was something that I was obstinate. I was the sticky wicket. Everyone's like, we got to make a sequel, and I was like, not until we have a great idea. Like, if we don't have a great idea, I'm not making a second movie. And then a week after I had said that, Joe Hill called up and said, I got the greatest idea. And so when he pitched me the idea, not only was I excited, I was like, oh, hell yeah, I want to make this movie. But then I began to start wondering, all right, what is the most interesting things we can do with this? And also, you know, people are very, especially in the horror space, very film literate. And so you can make references to other movies, even doing your own thing, and have like DNA from stuff, and people will dig it. And so, like, when people read this script, they're like, oh, so you got some Dream Warriors going on in there. And like, hell yeah, we do. Like, I'm a huge Dream Warriors fan. I love the Nightmare on Elm Street series. But we don't violate our own rules to do this. So we get to play around with the space in a way that you normally can't with movies, because we set up some rules that gave us so much more to play with than we had runway to do in the first film. So we were very excited to go in and then just make it great and make, you know, Ethan was so great as the grabber. We were like, how do we take him to the next level as a supernatural version of the grabber? And that's where we are here.
I want to talk about the environments as well. They're so important to these films. The first one kind of had that soul-sucking basement that we spend so much time in. And this one shifts its attention to kind of like a harsh winter environment. So how would you say that new scenery really kind of sets up the sequel and gives you a whole different feel?
Well, I mean, one of the big things is where the genesis of these films came from was Scott wanted to make a movie about his childhood. And he wanted, so a lot of the stuff in the first act of the first film is autobiographical for Scott. There's a little me woven in there, here and there, of experiences I had as a teenager. But we wanted to kind of root it in that. And so when we were going back, it's like, Scott, let's go back to your childhood. And one of the things was he went to winter camp every year. And he lived in Colorado, and snow was a big part of it. And my family's from upstate New York, so snow's a big part of my life, even though I'm a permanent Texan now. So he was like, let's make our snow movie. And I was like, oh, hell yeah. And so then it became, what set pieces can we write? How can we use that? What scares can we get out of it? You know, a lot of movies don't do it in the snow. We were so insistent on it being real that we shot in Canada, in winter. I love that I'm seeing people going, oh, that shot looks so fake. And it's like, that's real snow. Yeah, we didn't fake that snow. There's a few shots that you have to, you know, do things for VFX and things. Yeah. But in terms of this, that's all real snow. And we were really freezing our balls off. And, you know, it got down to -4 one day shooting that film. We had to shut down for weather. But the look is so great. It just looks, seeing it on the big screen, it just looks big and beautiful. And I'm so glad I got to make my snow movie.
Very last question for you.
Yeah.
Off topic, you also worked in the MCU.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask, you know, you guys worked on Doctor Strange 2 before it kind of changed, but just, you guys had talked about, like, Nightmare was on the plate, that villain. Can you talk about, like, can you reveal maybe some of what you guys wanted to explore and do with Nightmare that just ended up not happening?
Yeah, I mean, specifically, we wanted to have Nightmare be the villain of the first movie. And they loved the idea, but they were like, that's more of a second movie character. But so what we really want to do is, me and Scott like playing around with alternate realities and dream logic and things like that. You know, we're big fans of that kind of psychonaut kind of space, you know, going deep in your own dreams and the like. And so we wrote some stuff for the first film that we want to try to incorporate in the second film, of just that, you know, that dream world, and Doctor Strange having to do battle with this guy that is the master of dreams, and who the reality is his whims. And so we were playing around with that kind of stuff. And I was not involved in Multiverse of Madness. I hadn't been brought on yet before Scott decided to part ways. But yeah, it's Nightmare's such a great character, and I hope they get to play around with him someday. I'd love to go back and write a Nightmare script for them. So yeah.